Hello, hello, hello there. It's your girl Valerie Mason Chase. And look at here, look at here, look at here. We got the Cookie Man with us tonight.
Oh no.
Listen, this is the first episode that the Cookie Man has been on since we resumed in October. You haven't been
I
here.
haven't been on one. I think I've been on at least one.
Okay, name it.
I don't know. I didn't say I'm gonna name it. I said I think I've been on one.
Well, think again, boo.
I think I've been on one.
He thinks he has been on one. But anywho, give a shout out to the Cookie Man. So we are happy to have you here with us tonight, baby. I
Okay.
definitely wanted him here tonight to talk about this particular subject because it's a subject. It's something that a lot of couples face, and when couples face infidelity, what are you doing with your hand up there?
It's a delay.
Yeah, I know that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, what? Like, okay.
Listen, he's here for the first time and he already cutting up, y'all. Please pray for a sister. All right. But anywho, many couples face infidelity, and one of the questions that is typically asked, wow, will they do it again? Does once a cheater mean always a cheater? And probably, depending on who you ask, you might get several different responses to that. So that's what we want to talk about tonight. Because the Cookie Man and I, obviously, we are here. So we obviously believe that once a cheater does not mean always a cheater. And like our t-shirts say, overcome. We are overcomers. And how? The scripture says it, by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. And that is what this podcast for us is all about, because it's not necessarily easy to talk about some of the things that we discuss, but it's about helping other people see that there is hope and that you can overcome as well. So what you're about to say something.
I was going to say, sometimes obviously it comes down to the individuals.
Yeah.
And how many bites of the apple you're going to get. Because
that's true.
I mean, I can't speak for everyone. Just from my experiences, sometimes if it happened once, the chances are greater, I think, that it might happen again as opposed to not happen again. Because it takes a lot of...
I don't necessarily agree
with
either
that. Either way, I'll go back to my original statement.
Yeah.
The strength of the people, the maturity of the people, the strength of the relationship will determine how many chances you get to kind of muck up.
Well, in a sense. True that. True that.
I know.
So without further ado, I'm going to bring on our guest tonight. And you guys know, as always, we have some amazing guests. So when they come on, I just ask that you just give them a shout out. And I like for our podcast to be as interactive as possible. So if you have questions, if you have comments, if you've experienced infidelity in your relationship, by all means, chime in. So I'm going to first bring on, now I was just saying to this sister right here, Miss Gabrielle Scott, she and her husband were on almost 2 years ago now. We were talking about standing, I believe, or something about a second. I don't remember what the topic was. All I know is that the episode that Sister Gabrielle and her husband Troy were on has gotten the most views of episodes that we've had so far since we started. So please welcome Sister Gabrielle Scott. Hey, Sister Gabrielle.
Hey. Glad to be here. Thanks, Cookie Man.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for being here. And Sister Gabrielle was going to be here with her husband Troy. He couldn't join us tonight, but praise God, Sister Gabrielle is here, and we thank her and we welcome her and appreciate you being here. So this next guest is someone who is quite familiar to those of you who watch on a regular or semi-regular basis. None other than Dr. Danita Thompson. Hey, Dr. Danita.
Hello there. Hey, Frank and Valerie. Hi, Gabrielle. How are you?
Dr. Danita.
So nice to see you both here. So, Gabrielle, tell the viewers a little bit about yourself and anything that you would like to share.
Wow. Let's see. Troy and I were married for 33 years before I found out that he had been having several affairs throughout the marriage. When I found out, like a lot of women can say, I was shocked. I was floored. We were active in the church. We were elders. We were, you name it, we were it. We divorced. He divorced me to be with the last woman. We were divorced for 4 years. And during the 4-year process, I grew up. I can say he grew up. We were married. I was 17. He was 19. We had 8 kids in that span. And we grew up. We figured out who we were in that 4 years. I don't want to say it was necessary, but it was necessary.
I understand what that means.
For us to have the light shown on us individually. I could no longer blame him for this or that. He could no longer do the same. So long story short, we reconnected. My father passed away, and the only person in the whole world I'd ever want to be standing beside me during the time was Troy. He literally showed up. Hadn't seen him or spoken to him in 4 years. He showed up the morning that my dad died, which was expected but unexpected on that day. And we reconnected. We were married within less than 30 days. And this August, we have been restored. It'll be 4 years. So on top of the already 30, February will be 39 years of us married, not counting the break in there. Not going to lie, the restoration's been hard. It's been up. It's been down. But we're committed to the journey. We know what's on the other side because we see what we're already getting the taste of now. And the perks and the growth outweigh for us any bump that's going to come. So that's where we land with that. Our kids weren't necessarily all on board.
We understand that too.
But my kids are grown. I kept saying, y'all get to come home to somebody. I want to come home to somebody. And I don't want to come home to somebody new that I have to break in, right? So I put on my warm pair of slippers, and I think I'll keep them for another 30, Lord willing.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing, Gabrielle. I appreciate that. So, Dr. Danita, tell us a little bit about yourself and Mending Hearts.
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Danita. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. So working with married couples is a passion of mine. I am I lean more towards restoration, towards reconciliation, but I work with people wherever they are in their journey. I am the founder of Mending Hearts Behavioral Health and Family Services. We have 20 counselors. We all call ourselves passionate people helpers. We have just really a serious passion for seeing people find hope and healing, walking them through, their journeys. And I'm also, on one side, I am the marriage and family therapist, but I also do help people end well. If that comes to, the place where people decide that they need to divorce, I am a divorce mediator. I do want to see people end well, and especially for the children, and depending on where they may be in terms of raising families and things like that. So I'm excited about being on the show. I am here as the professional, but I've been married 42 years, and we also have a story of getting married very young and not knowing what to do in this marriage, and infidelity very early in the years. And so, many of us share the story.
Yeah. I think it is because you said you've been married for 40 something years and you have a story. I think it is almost impossible to be married for as long as we all have and there not be some type of story, because all marriages face challenges, not necessarily infidelity, but every marriage is going to face some sort of challenge. The question is, how are you going to navigate through that challenge so that you're able to get on the other side of it at some point and still kind of sort of like each other.
Yeah. I think the stories become a little bit more grave when you start out so young because you just don't know what to do and how to navigate marriage. And statistically speaking, we should definitely be divorced. But
absolutely, should still be divorced. Absolutely,
I concur. We came close to it ourselves. We had the papers, God put on the brakes, but yeah, we were really close to divorce. You remember, Ben?
Yeah, I remember she came to the house. Here the papers. Now, mind you, we living separately. I got my own place, but she got a key. But we separated. She come here, sign these papers. Now, mind you, she give them to me. I'm not in no rush to sign nothing. In spite of whatever I'm doing, living my life and thinking I'm happy, I wasn't in no rush. Next thing I think I did sign them.
We did eventually.
But we never took them, and she told me she was told to hold on to them. Right. And it's funny, even after signing them and holding on to them, infidelity occurred afterwards.
Yeah. So, and I was pissed at God because I said, "Why you tell me not to file these papers if you knew all of this stuff was still going to be going on and all this hurt and everything?" But as in any situation, God knows best, and sometimes you have to have faith and patience, because sometimes we got the faith part, but we don't always got the patience part.
And you have to be willing to do the work.
And willing to do the work. That's right, Dr. Danita. And willing to do the work. So I just want to give a shout out to those of you who are watching. Thank you so much for joining us on tonight. If you're not already a subscriber, I would appreciate if you would subscribe to the channel and like and click the notification bell, share, do all that good social media stuff that y'all be doing out there in social media land. Okay. So I just want to get started and ask, what have you found to be some of the most common reasons that individuals give for their infidelity?
Let me ask, now that he's been in therapy or prior? Because the answers were totally different.
Oh, both. I'd like to hear both.
Well, before, it was all my fault. If I had owned it, if I could have, or shoulda, woulda, couldas, prior to therapy. He was looking to be happy. I held the key to that happy. When he wasn't, it was my fault. Now that he's back and he's doing the work and doing hard work, he can come and say, I was broken. I didn't like me. I was looking for you to fill X, Y, Z, realizing that wasn't your place. And for us, a lot of those misconceptions, I hate to say this, a lot of it came from churches. I was responsible for making him feel this, that, and the third. And if he didn't, then where was I lacking? And so I spent a lot of time on that gerbil wheel between nursing babies, homeschooling babies, giving birth to babies. I was then babying him. They said, oh, you've got, I had 8 natural children, but in the church, I almost really had 10 because he made up 2 with his situations, right? So a lot of the backstory was, as a Christian wife, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And of course, my happiness and my satisfaction wasn't even part of the equation, because if I kept him in his space, then we all would just fall into that space. And that wasn't the case. So that was prior, that was before the divorce. And he was on his search to find whoever was going to fill those gaps and those holes.
Yeah. Now,
of course, the language, the responses are totally different. Because he's realized I can't fill. That's, I can start pouring, but I cannot fill it. That's not my job. That's not my responsibility. I'm not going to take it on. I'm not going to hold it. I'm not going to bear it. That's on you. Now we can talk it out, and you can figure out where I can help you walk through it. but I'm not going to walk through it alone and kind of drag you. You're either coming with because it's your work to do, or you're going to be left. So his reasonings were different on both sides of the equation, depending on what year it was, really, for us.
Okay, that's good. Dr. Anita, you about to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that, well, those that come to me, it's we fell out of love, or I fell out of love, lack of emotional connection. And those that say that they fell out of love, I believe they never understood what love really is. And that love wasn't a feeling, that love was a choice. And so not understanding that love is a choice, you can very easily fall out of love because your feelings are fleeting. They'll be up today and down tomorrow. I observe that there's a lot of selfishness. We live in a very individualistic society. So if you're not meeting my needs, me, mine, me and my and I, and it's all about me, and you're not doing the things that I need, then that can cause someone to look for greener grass. That the grass that they think is greener, that 20% that the spouse doesn't meet, they're going to looking for that, other 20%. Sometimes it's generational, it's patterns that have been in the family, and those patterns haven't been broken. I also noticed that objectification is really big, where sometimes men are only focusing on the physical attributes, and the wife becomes a thing to satisfy the need, and they don't get to the deeper emotional connection and the deeper reasons as to why you were joined together in the first place. It wasn't just a sexual need. And so that I find I think objectification happens without even knowing, without even realizing it, and just not getting the right foundation to understand what marriage really is and what you're entering and what we're supposed to be depicting, the family of heaven, the marriage of heaven. And those things aren't talked about enough. So if couples really understood why they were married, they would hold more to the commitment of the covenant.
Yeah, that's really good. I like you said about people not understanding what love really is and thinking, if I don't feel a certain way about my spouse today or next week or whenever, that I must not be in love with them any longer. Right. But love really truly is a decision. And let's just face it, in the ebb and flow of a relationship, there are going to be times when you ain't feeling your partner, and that's okay. Sure. There's going to be times when they're not feeling you, right, Frank? We don't always feel each other.
I wasn't feeling you when you woke me up to come out here.
Sure, baby, go ahead.
I think if some of the reasons infidelity occurs, especially in young marriages, we don't have, I think it's culturally, we don't seek premarital counseling.
Right.
There's no how to do book, so to speak. So then when you meet someone and you each bring your own baggage into that situation, it is so easily to be distracted and to think what you see over here is so great, because they're not bringing, you might see that person, whether it's him or her, for that day or whatever, and they're going about their business. You don't have to deal with all the stuff that couples bring into a relationship that can impact the
marriage. That's really true. You're not dealing with the day-to-day stuff. The kids and the diapers and, well, how we gonna pay this bill, and you're trying to rob Peter to pay Paul, and you're doing all this stuff. You're not dealing with that stuff over there. It's all fun. It's all fun, but it's also all fluff, because the realness is not truly there.
Right.
Ali Hall said, "Yes, Cookie Man."
So Gabrielle hit on something. Growing up in Christianity, all of my years, it had always been the responsibility of the woman, the responsibility of the girl. How she dressed would, would put him in temptation. You're never, ever did I hear when I was growing up the responsibility and the onus being on the man to keep himself.
Absolutely. Right. Never heard it.
It was always the woman's responsibility. If you don't withhold from your husband, make sure you submit, make sure but the talk about that, we read the scripture, love your wife as Christ loved the church, but there wasn't a lot of talk about how sacrificial that is.
Oh, right.
How unconditional that is.
Right.
How to chase after all the things that Jesus did. And I didn't hear those things. I only heard what I was responsible for.
And that was the loudest thing you heard.
Yes.
And that was what he heard as well. So therefore, any responsibility was yours. If it wasn't going right, it was your responsibility to fix it, maintain it. I would hear all the time, he would say to me, if you only did, then this would be perfect. And so you start doing, and then it was something else. Then it was something else. And then it was something else. And if you're like me, you only want to do so many of those check-offs before you throw up and go, okay, well, I'm out of this game because I'm the only one that's holding the responsibility of it. But you want to be called the leader and the head and the this, but you don't want the responsibility of it.
Right. Yeah, it's easier to kind of put the responsibility on someone else,
right?
To keep a marriage. And I don't want to say all men, but I think growing up, I always felt or thought we as men had this inherited right to hunt.
Right.
To be out there doing whatever, even if we're in a committed or married, it was a man's right of passage, so to speak, to do whatever, and you take care of everything else, and don't worry about it. I'll come home and that's it.
Yeah.
And once that is ingrained in you, it now becomes so hard to deviate. First of all, you don't want to deviate because you're being selfish and you're thinking about you. And putting the work, as you said, becomes hard. And again, I wasn't doing hard. It became easy to just step around something or cause an argument so I can kind of go someplace else. And you hear all those voices in your head, and it became such a struggle to what is right in there.
Yeah. And, in retrospect, I think that, because I used to question, like I said, I was pissed off when I heard God say to not file the divorce papers, but there was still a 2-year period before we were reconciled. A lot happened in that 2-year period. And I think part of it was God encouraging me to give him a chance to work on Frank, to help Frank grow up so that he could be responsible and fulfill some of those roles that you didn't know how to before. You didn't see an example of it. Nobody really taught you. Because see, Frank didn't grow up in church like I did. And so even in church, you get bad messages. So so it's not just that. But yeah, I think that a lot happened in that 2-year period. So I can see that. I can definitely see that now. So I'm wondering, Dr. Danita, are there certain types of infidelity, such as emotional versus physical, that might be more indicative of future behaviors? Or does it matter?
Well, I think that, physical infidelity can often be viewed as, if it's not a long-term affair. Long-term affairs, you're kind of making connections, emotional connections. But if it's more transactional, like a give and take, I get some attention, I give you sex, I get validation, or there's some excitement. It's different from what I get at home. I think that that type of infidelity, when dealt with, is easier to get beyond than if you're in an emotional affair. Because with the
Mhm.
emotional affair, it's a heart-to-heart connection, and it's not that easy to break that, to disconnect the hearts, and
Right.
emotional infidelity can sneak up on you. Like, you can be having these interactions and deep conversations, and initially not really thinking that you're going into this relationship with the idea that I'm going to be, unfaithful. But the more that you end up connecting, it ends up getting to that point of having that emotional affair. And once your
Mm.
heart is connected, it's a lot more challenging than the physical, if it's just physical.
Right.
Yeah. I would agree with that, because sometimes the physical, like you said, is easier to walk away from, but that
Mhm.
emotional connection is more challenging, especially when you have gotten to the point where you believe that now this person is now your person as opposed to your spouse.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And what's going to happen if I leave this over here that I think now is my person and go back over here to my spouse? What might happen? So, yeah,
Right.
I absolutely agree that the emotional affair is a lot challenging.
So,
Yeah.
Gabrielle, I have a question. Gabrielle,
Mhm.
how has your communication changed since the infidelity occurred? And what were the biggest challenges you faced during that recovery process?
Well, first, we'll be clear, we're still recovering.
I'm sorry?
Mm-hmm. She said
We're
they're
still
still recovering.
recovering.
Okay, got it.
It's still very active for us.
Mm-hmm.
Communication has changed because now there's no withholding.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm.
I say what needs to be said. He says what he needs to say. Um, Sometimes it comes out really nice and we can have these really good back and forth conversations. Sometimes it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
because we're in the emotions, or it's the heat of the moment, or I've been triggered, or something's triggered him,
Mm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that I'm learning. He will say to me, we were driving down the street. And he says, "I don't want to go down here." What do you mean you don't want to go down here? I used to ride down here with her, and it
Mm-hmm.
bothers me. So, being the one who was betrayed, yes, we get triggered, but I'm learning that so does he, in
Mm.
his own way and with his own issues. So I have to be just as responsive to him as he is to me.
Mm-hmm.
So our communication is now open. Um, the requirement is that we bring everything to the table, um, and understanding that it's not always going to be brought in a neat package. Sometimes it's with screaming, sometimes it's with yelling, but it's brought to
Mm.
the table. Um,
Yes. Yes.
we've learned how to do, when it comes and there's a lot of emotion, being able to say, okay, can we put this on pause, move back, not run from it. We gather ourselves and we come back. Where before, we walk away, we don't talk for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, and that
Mm-hmm.
subject is still brewing. Now it's we're both acknowledging we need some space, but we got to talk about this. This is a hot topic, and we need to talk about it. But we're not going to get anywhere with this. And I see how upset you are, or we
Mm-hmm.
both are, and
Mm-hmm.
so being able to step away and say, "Can we come back and do this in an hour?" And an hour might be
Right.
good for me, but might not be good for him. And I have to respect that. And he'll say, "Yes, let's
Mm-hmm.
come back in an hour." And he'll go, "I need some more time." Okay. But knowing that we're not just turning our backs intentionally and not addressing whatever the topic is. But our
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
restoration is still very fresh, it's still very ongoing. Um, and how long that'll be, I have no idea, because I've never done it before, because I didn't think I'd be here.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I knew I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to be restored. Um, didn't know what that was going to look like. Not in a million years that I thought it would be this. Um, so we literally are taking it day by day. Some days are fantastic where nothing goes on. There are no triggers. There's not even topic of the past. Then there's some
Yeah.
days where that kind of occupies us all day because there's been a trigger from one or the other. Um, or I'll get a question, that'll just pop up out of the blue. Like we can be just sitting at the movies, and I'll look over and say, did she wear red lipstick? And he's like, what? And it's just a thought I had, and I need an answer. And I need an answer now on it. It used to bother him because he's like, I'm trying to forget about it. Yeah, but you're trying to forget about it. I'm trying to get questions answered that I need answered for me in order to move forward. So keeping conversation or keeping communication open, viable, honest, transparent, and walking this out every single solitary day is where we're landing with this.
Yes, yes. That is so key what you said about the honesty and the openness in communication, because without that, the restoration will probably not be very successful. It'll be so much more challenging when you cannot have those open conversations. And when Frank and I first got back together, for quite some time, that was really hard to have those conversations, especially when, like you said, something would come to my mind and I'd ask him a question. Well, why do you want to know that? I want to know because I want to know.
Right. And I want to know now.
I want to know because I want to know, and I want to know now. So don't ask me. Don't answer my question with the question, fella.
Right.
Answer the question, and you get pushback.
I would. That was one of my toughest battles, so to speak. Because, like I said, I'm trying to forget. I didn't come back here to bring it all with me.
Yep.
I'm trying to leave it where it is.
Right.
And questions would come up, and I'd say, okay, why? Nah. And my tone would just mess up everything. So now we're fighting over something, and we're still going to have to deal with the question, but we're fighting over something else. But it what you said earlier, you're still in the recovery phase.
Yes.
Because things are triggered, that's a good thing. I think we're constantly in a recovery phase. Now that recovery phase looks different. It's not every day,
right?
But certain days something comes up that because of the phase we find ourselves in, or I find myself in, I'm able to deal with the question. Right. Sometimes still I don't like it, but I understand where it's coming from. It's better to not get defensive, or even if I do, catch a breath, think, where this is coming from, Frank. It ain't about today. Let's answer the question, and maybe I can go back and watch Law and Order. She leave me alone.
and what he allows me to do he used to get really frustrated, just like you, Frank, really, really frustrated. But he's learned to allow me to have the question and then say, is there anything else? Did I answer that enough? And sometimes I'm like, well, yeah, you did. And then sometimes I'm like, no, I'm sure there's a part B. Give me a little bit, because I now want to question your part A. So so even in that allows the recovery to move, because he's given me the platform to, have I answered it? Can I follow up with anything? Do you have anything else? Was that answer good enough for this part right here? And usually it is, but there's usually a B and a C, sometimes a D that comes just because I'm thinking. I want to know, you were gone for 4 years. What did that look like? What took you so long? How did, and when he first came back, everything was the negative. Oh, she was this and she was this. And I'd say, she must have been good somewhere because you stayed for 4 years.
Right.
And I understood him trying not to hurt me in that.
Right.
But I want to know it all. Like, was her brownies better than mine? Like, something held you for 4 years. So, and again, I understand, no, she was this and she was this and she nagged me. He gave me the laundry list of the negatives. But there had to be something that held you for that long. And he will say now very openly, I was afraid. I didn't know if you were going to be there like you promised you would. And I had so much shame. That makes sense to me, knowing who he is and how he operates and how he functions, in just the shame aspect in his past. That's an answer I can now take, and I see why he brought me the negative first, as opposed to, this is why I stayed longer.
Yeah. That vulnerability is extremely essential, for moving forward. One of the things that I struggle with, though, when I'm working with couples, I know that it is par for the course that, the questions will come. I get a little bit concerned. Sometimes I challenge the one who has been hurt, and I ask, is this question going to help you? Is the answer to this question going to help you?
Mm-hmm.
Or, like, is knowing this information going to help you move forward, or how will it help you move forward? Because I
Right.
know that some details will hurt. We're already hurt. You're already hurt, right? But some of those details can weave its way into the future, and you knowing that this happened, then it prevents you sometimes from exploring or doing, or being
Right.
free.
Right.
So I do understand the questions come. Sometimes I wonder, will the answer to this question benefit you?
And that's what
Yeah.
I've had to learn to do
Mm-hmm.
with my therapist going, you have a right to ask anything you want, but you need to, number one, be prepared for the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then what are you going to do with the information once you get it?
Once you get it.
Are you
Yeah.
going to stack it up
Absolutely.
against him?
Mm-hmm.
You know, are you going to add it to his strikes, or are you going to take it away? And I needed to, because the person who I was with and the person who committed this act, to me, are two very separate people. And so in the early part, I spent a lot of time trying to make them want, like, I tried to bring them together, understanding that this guy over here who did all of this was so hurt and so wounded and so broken just on his own accord without me even being in the picture, hence the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And then here we are. So I'm learning how, with my questions, to separate his behavior from who he is to his core.
That's
Yes.
good.
And
Yeah.
my questions and his answers help me do that faster than me doing it up here. Because if I do it up here, I've created a whole case.
Right.
You know, I've already
Right.
hit the gavel. But when I bring it, I even in his answers sometimes will sound like this old guy, and I can hear the hurt behind the answer. And I go, okay, that's that guy who's answering that question, not
Yeah.
this new renewed mind guy who's sitting in front of me. And for
Yeah.
me, it gives me so much empathy for him. And my kids are like, what do you mean you have empathy for him? You know, you should be. And I am at times enraged and, want to do all of that. But a lot of it, I sit and I go, for me, he had to be so incredibly broken to commit such, in my view, such a heinous crime against his 8 children, the wife of his youth, to do that. You had to have been broken beyond anything that I could even see or begin to repair. And so when he
Yeah.
comes with the responses and the answers, I've learned not to see him as this broken little boy, but to almost read behind what he's giving me. Because I know what he wants to say now, where before I'd be like, okay, you just punking out. You just give me whatever you want. So I'm learning to listen and pay attention and understand who it is that's bringing me the answer to my question.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. I get it. I absolutely get it. I want to back up to something that Dr. Danita said about questions. And I believe that no question is off limits except if there was a sexual affair, what happened in the bedroom. I think that's where you draw the line. I think you can ask anything and everything and expect a response up to the bedroom. But I think beyond that, I don't think that is information that is, let me rephrase that. Having that information, I don't think is necessarily helpful for recovery. So I think there's a
Absolutely
limit.
agree. And I've asked
Questions.
everything, and that's funny because that question has never even entered my scope of question and answers.
Yeah.
I want to know the little things.
Right.
Right. Because like Frank said, he's a man, he hunts, right? So I get all of that. I want to know what it was that she tapped that allowed you to open up.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was
That's
my
good.
number one question. I met Troy when I was 5 and he was 7, right? So this is like a lifetime of like stuff, right? So
Yeah.
for me, it was even, and knowing that I'm not responsible for anything that he did unequivocally, 100%, but still wanting to know what did I not tap that she did. And the thing that he has said repeatedly is she blew my head up. She
She
told me
gave
I
you
was
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. She told me I
affirmation.
was this. Right. And
Yeah.
I said to him, I said, well,
Yeah.
I wore that cheerleading outfit for 25 years. It doesn't fit anymore. I've had 8 kids. I've done all the cheerleading. You know, I'm in sweatpants and a t-shirt now, baby. Like, so, but that
Yeah.
was his reasoning. She just kept telling me I was fantastic. I was fantastic. I was the greatest thing since Jesus. Oh, okay. And he
Mm-hmm.
says it very confidently, but yet when he says it, you can almost hear him going, that sounds so dumb. That sounds so
Mm-hmm.
immature, because that was that's what she tapped.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in between balancing babies, I guess I stopped tapping that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I get that.
I don't know that I would view it necessarily as immature if that's his love language. It was a
Mm.
choice for him to go get it someplace else without having, without going to counseling or having conversations with
To
you about
say
what
it.
you need to say it. And I mean, the love languages are the love languages, and the need is the need.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The accountability for how you're going to get the need met matters.
That
But I
matters.
think I say the immaturity because I understand that his love language is actually touch, surprisingly, but um, at some level, you got to learn how to like pat yourself on the back and on the head, especially
Mm.
when you, again, in a marriage and a family, like, Valerie was saying, we're trying to rob Peter to pay Paul. I'm not, at least I can tell you way back then when there were 8 babies running around my feet and I'm nursing and homeschooling and doing that whole thing, thinking, oh my goodness, I didn't applaud you today. I didn't affirm you today. I love you. I'm here.
Mm.
Dinner's on the thing. I'm running upstairs now to start baths. Can you run up, can you bring them up in twos for me as I go? So he, if his love language is what I believe it is, and he has said he was getting his touch, it was just the affirmation, excuse me, that wasn't there. And I guess in the busyness of life, you stop and you
Mm-hmm.
go, well, I don't know if anybody was getting it then. Babies were being
Mm-hmm.
fed and bills were being paid, and we were going to bed, waking up to start it all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in those days though, we were not properly mentored,
Mm-hmm.
guided to understand that we need the village so that we can take breaks with our spouses, and that
Right.
spouses are going to be the ones that we look at when all of our children have left the nest. And I know I didn't get that, take those,
Neither do
put the kids I can't imagine having 8 kids, but put the kids to bed and and
And I'm going with them.
learning how to develop a routine with the husband so that one person isn't completely spent by the time the
Mhm.
night is over, so that the two of you can come together,
So
even
that wasn't even in this,
in the
even
scope
in
of
the scope of life.
understanding. I understand,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
Right.
and that's the unfortunate part,
It
because
is.
you both
You
had,
know,
you probably didn't, you had needs too, but you were on the hamster wheel of mothering,
Oh,
of
for
and,
sure.
motherhood.
And
never
again, being a
got it.
Christian mother, my needs were way down here, right? So
Way,
they weren't even spoken of.
absolutely.
They weren't even
Right.
spoken about or mentioned.
Yeah. That's why I am very, very intentional when I have a couple, especially those that have small children. And I encourage and I drill into them. Be intentional about setting some time aside for you and your spouse.
Yes.
You are not just a mother. You are not just a father. You are also a man and a woman engaged in this intimate relationship. And it's difficult for some people as they say, oh, well, we don't have childcare. I even have conversations with them. Okay, well, let's brainstorm and let's try to figure out where you can possibly figure out a childcare scenario that will allow you to have some time to focus on your relationship. So it's really important. And you're right, Dr. Danita, all of that was overlooked when we were younger. Nobody talked about that. There was more talk about catering to your husband, catering to the children, and you just there.
Right.
You ain't got no needs. You ain't supposed to have none. So, yeah. And I also want to address something you said, Gabrielle. I think really resonates with me, and I had not considered it before when you said that you and your husband are still in recovery. And looking at me and Frank, we have been reconciled longer. But when I think about recovery, I'm thinking about it from the perspective of, let's say, an alcoholic or a drug addict. When they go through that 12-step program, they go through detox or whatever, they are not consuming their drug of choice any longer, but they still consider themselves to be in recovery. Because when I think about recovery, it's being constantly aware of the possibility that this can happen again and being focused on doing what's necessary and taking the steps and setting the appropriate boundaries to prevent it from happening again. So Absolutely. I like what you said about the recovery part, because I hadn't thought of it like that before until you just said that. So thank you for that. So yeah, Frank, we're still in recovery.
Well, that's what I was kind of alluding to, saying.
I know, but I just said it again.
Oh. The triggers come up. Whatever.
The triggers, yeah, absolutely. Someone had asked the question for you, Gab. I want to get back to Miss Ollie. And she said you don't have to answer if you are uncomfortable. She said, do you have any problems with the other lady that your husband was with? I don't think he married her, but he was with her for a number of years.
He did not marry her. She most definitely wanted him to marry her. But he said he knew that if he did, because he really didn't have a relationship with us or the kids, who are now, our kids are adults. During that time, he said if he married her, that would have been the end. There would have been no return from that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. You got a question, baby?
Yeah. How does accountability play a role in preventing future infidelity?
Either one of you can answer that.
Danita?
Well, I think in being accountable, you're fully acknowledging and accepting, responsibility for what you did. Even if you were at a space where, because I don't think that it's ever one person's complete fault. It's one person's fault to make the choice to be unfaithful, but I don't think it's ever one person's fault where the marriage, ended at that point. But the person who was unfaithful absolutely has to have a sincere apology, be able to show empathy, and that's part of taking accountability for what they have done. Absolutely ending the affair if they got caught, if it hadn't already ended. Being willing to give as much time as possible, being willing to have accountability partners, or a partner, a mentor. I don't think that anyone, I don't think any man, whether they have had an affair or not, I don't think a couple should not have someone that they're accountable to, although many do. Many do not, I should say, have someone that they can go to, or someone that can call them on the carpet, or their behaviors. That's I think is very important.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
So what might you recommend for rebuilding trust as well as intimacy in a relationship post infidelity?
Well, Gabrielle has shared a lot of things that they are already doing, the open dialogue, being vulnerable, bringing everything to the table. Forgiveness, obviously, is at the top of the list. Being willing to heal together, and being willing to put in the time and the commitment to the healing process. One of the things that I find is that very often, and we're talking tonight as if only men cheat, but
we know better than that. Yeah,
we know better than that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I find, particularly for men, is that they're able to compartmentalize, and so they're able to put that cheating in a box. And now I'm moving forward. And so women don't put things in a box like that. Everything that you do, women are watching, and it all comes into one ball, and so we don't have that ability to just throw it in a box and that's over. Now I'm going to move on to the next thing. So anything that looks like, sounds like, smells like, it is like.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And until we have settled in our heart, until it's a done deal in our heart, it's really only a minimized screen. And so we minimize lots of screens. And then if there's any trigger, it gets maximized. And then the next one gets maximized, and all the screens just pop up. When it's settled in our heart, then we can exit out.
That's good. I like that.
And I think if I could add something, I did, in the process of him being gone, had no intentions of forgiving him. Just put that out there. None. None. Can't tell you the day I did. Don't know the process. It was just there. Probably 2 years after he was gone, it just kind of worked its way. God did it. There I was. But I think the forgiveness is number one key, and it's at the top. But it also looks different day in and day out for me. It's not just this blanket, I have forgiven you. Now let's just go about our merry way and do kumbaya. It looks very, very different at different times for me. Still there, but it looks different. And I have to sometimes break it down for him because he thinks, like you said, oh, you forgave me. Like, what's the deal? Like, what do you mean? And I have very much so, because I say to him, you wouldn't be sitting here, boo, if I hadn't. Right? You would not be in this space. But it still looks and feels different at different phases of this recovery. If I'm going through something outside of him, it looks different because I require something different from him in that forgiveness space. If I'm not going through anything, I really don't, because I can carry it by myself and don't want to say burden him, but I don't have to bring it to him because I can work it out within me. A lot of those questions and a lot of that tension sometimes that comes, but there's times that I need to bring it to the table, just depending on where I am. Still forgive you, still going to walk this thing out till the end, but it looks different today. And I think a lot of people that we talk to, oh, you forgave them. It was just like this blanket thing. And the forgiveness was blanket, I guess, in that regard, but it looks different.
It's walked out daily.
Right. And I don't want to say it feels different because, feelings, do this with a woman, just depending on if the day was good, if the shop had what you needed, whatever. But it looks and feels different as I journey through it. And whoever, anybody listening, just know that if you forgave him Monday and you're still feeling antsy Monday night, that doesn't discount the Monday morning forgiveness.
Right.
You just need to bring that antsy to him if that
that's good. Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Before I ask this next question, I wanted to go back when you said we men we rather put things in a box and try to move on as quickly as possible
and bury the box.
And a lot of times I found myself not wanting to ask any questions, not because I didn't want to know, because I figured that would trigger her to ask me something that I felt I didn't want to have to deal with and answer at the moment.
Yeah.
But that was the biggest thing, not asking questions, or sometimes I'm trying to protect her, but that wasn't for me to do and say, well, you shouldn't ask these questions.
Yeah.
Questions come, as you said earlier, they come. My responsibility is just to answer them.
Right.
Yeah. Even though sometimes you say you got the person who's asking the questions got to ask themselves. I know what question I'm about to ask.
Am I ready?
Am I ready for what he or she might say?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And there might have been some questions that I didn't ask because I didn't think that I could handle the answer early on. It's a lot easier now. I can ask anything now, and whatever his answer is, I can handle it relatively well, I think. But for the most part, every once in a while, there might be something that we said. And see, this is a strange thing now. And some people may get it and some may not. We can even laugh about the affairs now. We can laugh, we can talk about it, and then he might mention something that went on inside the affair or vice versa. And I say, oh, wow, really?
Hold on. I don't volunteer.
You don't volunteer
anything. we can talk and laugh about various things that went on or something, but I'm not waking up. Hey, babe, guess what? No, I'm just.
Well, that part is in the midst of a conversation.
Yeah, I'll answer, and like I said, boy, that was crazy. I can't believe I did that, or whatever the case. And we can laugh about it, but I'm not volunteering nothing.
Now I will say he will do that. He will go, you know what? And he will bring up something that we can laugh about. We're not always giggling about it, but we can have a light moment.
Yes.
Okay. In your opinion, I guess that could be either one of you. What is the biggest misconception about recovering from an affair?
The biggest misconception of recovering from it?
Yeah.
Is that it happens overnight. Or that it's not a process. Or that there's a time limit. Or that everybody's going to respond the same.
Or the thought, once a cheater, always a cheater.
Always a cheater, right.
Right. Absolutely.
It's not true, There are many people who have forgiven, who have recognized, taken accountability, and made the decision that they were wrong, and they're never going to hurt their spouse or themselves, or put the marriage in jeopardy again.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. That misconception and that thought that once a cheater, always a cheater. Because in order for me, if I were to have that belief, I would have to totally discount the power of Almighty God to transform and to make a change in a person's life. And being the believer that I am, I believe in the absolute sovereignty of God, and I strongly believe in the power of the Holy Spirit to make the necessary changes and help guide someone in a way that lessens the possibility, and so in some cases eliminates the possibility of them cheating again. So yeah, I don't believe once a cheater, always a cheater, but I do believe that people have to go through a process, whatever that process looks like for them, in order to work through the stuff that resulted in the marriage being vulnerable to an affair in the first place. That's what I think.
I think also people will think that it will never be the same. And in some regard, you don't want it to be the same, because whatever it was when they got you to the place where the affair began, that's not the place you want to be. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing that it won't be the same. You want it to be better. You want it to be different. You want it to be a growth opportunity. You want to mature from this. You want to connect on a deeper level, and on a level that you haven't connected.
We say to each other when it starts to feel familiar. This feels familiar. We don't want to feel familiar with each other. We want it to be new and exciting. And when it feels familiar, that's when we start to have to back up and take assessment.
Exactly.
Of
Yeah.
things.
That's the time to reevaluate.
Is where you get complacent.
Yeah. So as we are coming to the close of our session, I want to ask what message you may have, what hopeful message you may have, or something you can share with the listeners who are currently struggling with the aftermath of infidelity.
There's hope on the other side. And not rainbows and sprinkles and unicorn. Real hope, life-changing hope on the other side of it. And it's going to be probably the hardest journey you've ever walked. But if you two are committed to doing the hard work, and it is hard work, you'll reap the benefits on the other side. And it will be sweeter than the first go round, hands down. But it's the hardest journey I've ever walked in my life. But the benefits have undoubtedly outweighed the pain even. And the pain every day gets further and further back. It's not as tangible as it used to be. But it's still there. But we're putting in the work. And we're reaping the benefits of putting in the work.
And I can sum up with what Gabrielle is saying. I say to my clients, I have a definition of hope. Gabrielle is saying that there's hope on the other side. And basically what she is saying is that I talk about 3 powers that equal hope. And one is willpower. First of all, you have to want, to do. You have to have the will to want to take this healing journey. Then you have to have the way power. And so Gabrielle and her husband are going to counseling. They're understanding the way, the education, the way to get to this hope. And then you have to have weight power. You have to, WAIT, you got to be able to wait it out because it is not going to happen overnight. So willpower plus weight power equal hope.
Wow, I love that. I took notes on that. I'm gonna be sharing that with my clients. I'm gonna be sharing that with my clients. I may or may not give you credit, but I'm gonna use it.
I read it in a book someplace, so don't give me credit. I gotta remember who I think it was Wortherington. Did you read any of his material? Everett, I think I read it in his material.
Okay.
So. Yeah.
Wow. So this has been a really great podcast. There was so much that was shared, and I want to thank you all just for sharing from your heart, your openness, your willingness to be transparent, because there's somebody out there that needs to hear what was shared, because they're thinking that there's nothing on the other side, or it's hopeless, or we got to get a divorce, or we got to separate, or yes, there is something on the other side. And I just want to thank you. Miss D is saying thank you for sharing. And again, if you're not already subscribe to the channel, Marriage Beyond the Breach. If you need counseling, Dr. Danita at Mending Hearts Behavioral Health and Family Services in Florence, New Jersey. And come back next week. Next week, I don't know if we're going to have the Cookie Man. We gonna have you, baby?
I don't know, baby.
He's not promising to be here. But we're going to talk about a little pet peeve of mine. We're going to talk about relationship etiquette. And we're going to be defining some terms, because I think terms of courting and dating and relationship and commitment kind of have gotten fuzzy over the last few years. So I want to talk about that and just give some insight on some of those things. So thank you. It's been amazing. God bless you. And I can't wait until we do it again. I'm going to be in touch with you, Miss Gabrielle. I would love for you to come back again. Dr. Zeta, you already signed up.
Okay, good night, ladies.
All right.
So much.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Love you. Have a great week.
Thank you, Dr. Danita.
Nice meeting you.